Welcome to Tri-State Sports Talk here on AM 730 KWOA. Earlier this week, myself, along with RadioWorks Director of News and Information, Justine Wettschreck, had a chance to catch up over the phone with Minnesota West President Dr. Richard Shrubb, talk about the Minnesota West football program and the sanctions brought down by the Minnesota College Athletic Conference. Dr. Shrubb, we really do appreciate the time. Thank you so much for taking a few moments with us here today.
It's always a pleasure. Communication makes everybody better in the long run.
Exactly. Well, Dr. Shrubb, we have you on the program here today. We're going to be talking, obviously, about the football incident and kind of what is leading up to the latest event and the latest news. Let's go back and start with the actual incident itself. Can you just kind of recap for us what all happened during the playoff football game between Minnesota West and Central Lakes?
Sure. On October 26th, our football team was at an away game in Brainerd. And the game it's a playoff game, and the two teams have always been competitive. We lost the game, by the way. We lost the game fair and square. The coach on the opposing team felt like the tensions were high enough for the group that he didn't want to have people shake hands after the game. Unfortunately, our own coach didn't get that word, so he lined our players up to shake hands after the game, and the Brainerd team, rather than come shake hands, they left. The thing I need to mention is that throughout this game, we're getting reports that throughout the game there were horrible racial slurs being hurled at our players from fans that were very close to them, perhaps too close at the game, fans who should not have been allowed that kind of access onto the sidelines and into the end zones. So the tensions were high, partially because the two teams are always competitive, but also there was some racial incentive for our players to feel abused. And when the Brainerd team didn't come and shake hands at the end of the game, our players felt like they were doing it for racial reasons, that they didn't want to shake their hands for racial reasons. So at that point, our coaches called the players back to leave the field, and four of our players proceeded across the field and started first of all was a verbal altercation with the opposing team. The name of the team is really incidental at this point, so I'm going to stop saying it. It was just an opposing team. Throughout the investigation, they've been exonerated, by the way, the school and the team. So our players went across to confront them. Four of our players went across and ignored the coaches calling them back and telling them to get back. Well, at that point, I think it was a pushing and verbal altercation, but when team members see each other being challenged like that, they all go to the fight. That goes back, I guess, to the first football game anybody ever played anywhere. So at that point, the conflict escalated, and our coaches had time to get across the field, and the management from the opposing team did too, and broke up the fight. Then some of our players went across the field, some did not. Our players went to the place where the bus was parked and where their own cars were parked. Not every player rode on a bus, but the players went to where their transportation was. And that's where things really got out of hand from the reports that we're receiving. Credible people are telling us that there were some local fans from Brainerd who were extremely out of line, intoxicated, and hurling horrible racial slurs at our players. One of our players was there was a woman there who the players describe as elderly. I'm 54, so she could have been 40. You know how young people are. I don't know, but they described her as elderly and really drunk. That's the quote from the players. But she was just extremely abusive to our players verbally. So they kept saying, just let us go, just let us leave. And witnesses are verifying this. Let us go, let us leave. Then the woman pulled out her cell phone and was talking into her cell phone like she was being assaulted. And at first our players thought she was recording the conversation. Then it occurred to them she's talking to somebody and pretending to be assaulted by these players. So sure enough, a very large man came running through the crowd, and I've heard that he's related to the woman. I don't know that for a fact. We're calling for a racial investigation now at this point, so all those details will come out. But a very large man came running through the crowd, ripped off his shirt, chest bumped one of our players, and punched him. Then a little fist fight broke out there because our player was defending himself. The other guy felt like he was defending what I heard was his mother. I'm not sure about that. But at that point, a little fist fight broke out among some people, not everybody. Our players were grabbing each other and putting each other in cars, pushing them up on the bus. By then, the police showed up. We want to be sure the police investigation was objective and professional. We're getting some reports that it was not. So the resulting racial investigation, it's called the 1B investigation in the MNSCU system. At that point, the MCAC report really begins, and it does justifiably criticize our 4 players who went across the field, and we have taken disciplinary action against those players at Minnesota West, by the way. What I feel like I should have added was all the part that I talked about in detail about the incidents leading up to that, because our players didn't just suddenly lose their minds and go start a fight. There was a lot leading up to that. So the report that you have from MCAC lists the incident and the players. Again, please don't use their names. At this point, it's just too specific and not relevant. But it did put all of our athletic programs on probation. We had 10 days to respond from Minnesota West, so I consulted internally and externally with constituents in the college and then leadership positions throughout the town, and took what time I could for that 10-day period and sent a reply saying if we would voluntarily sanction our own football program if you take everybody else off probation. We felt like the probation for everybody was too general to get everybody in a little bit of trouble and not specific enough against the people who really did need some reprimand. So the rest of it, I think you saw. I'm asking for suspension of the program pending a period of review. The previous president at Minnesota West, his name is Dr. Ron Wood, a man I respect tremendously for his financial and athletic abilities. He's agreed to head up an ad hoc committee that would do some research into the management of the program, revision of the program, and hopefully the perpetuation of the program, including sources of funding and how we should manage it into the future. I'm doing that in exchange with hopefully with the agreement with MCAC, Minnesota Athletic Collegiate Council, hopefully with their approval that we can suspend just that one program, review it, modify it, and then hopefully come back later without punishing everybody who's an athlete at Minnesota West. So that's kind of where we are right now. Ron has agreed to head up the committee. We haven't established it yet. He's going to be gone for a week, and I'll be in the state capitol too for a week. So really, it's a good time for us to get together next week and establish some committee parameters and exactly what the committee's recommendations to me will be. Additionally, I'd love to start a soccer program at the college. So while the football program is being reviewed by this committee of constituents and athletic experts, I'm hoping that we can talk about the feasibility of adding a soccer program as well, particularly for our Worthington program, our Worthington community. So that's kind of where we are. That just summarizes everything that happened that I know and everything that MCAC did and what we did in response.
Dr. Shrubb, when you say that you would voluntarily sanction your own football program, does that mean that you would are you considering cutting that program or going along with what they said about it being on probation?
I doubt it's going to be necessary to cut the program. I'm trying not to say too much that would limit the committee's imagination. So I'm hopeful that we can keep everything we have now. I doubt it's going to be necessary to permanently close anything. With a little bit of luck and some cooperation from MCAC, we can review this program and be right back on board with our team modified but uninterrupted for next year. So I really don't see it being necessary for us to cancel our program at this time. Times evolve. Who knows what's going to happen in the future. 2 days ago, I was listening to Brett Favre on television talk about he wouldn't let his son play if he had one. And, it's just interesting to hear how American sports are transitioning. So who knows what the distant future holds. We keep reviewing everything for efficiency and applicability, but for now, I really doubt that's going to be necessary to cut the football program.
Dr. Shrubb, you talked about wanting to gather public input about the football program after the first MCAC letter came out. What was the response that you got from the public?
Oh, it was wonderful. I had emails and letters and people coming by the school, and it really refreshed me just to see the level of commitment that people have to not only the football program, but also to Minnesota West. And every once in a while, it's just good for us to hear from the community in a way like that lets us know what people care about and what they're willing to advocate for. The caution that I told every single person and still would like to talk about now is that having high sentiment for a program is one thing, but somehow we have to be able to translate that into tangible benefits and financing and funding. We need people to attend the games. We need people to donate to the foundation. Our players, we're Division III, so a lot of people don't know that our players have to buy quite a lot of their own equipment, and transportation can be out of their own pockets. We're prohibited from funding our program much as a Division III school, but we can still get people can still help out our team financially and emotionally by attending the games and cheering for the team. So I really am very, very grateful it's wonderful. It really is to see the abundance of feedback that we got. But I'm cautious to tell everybody that enthusiasm has to translate into real support. You can't just want something without supporting it in tangible ways. And I'm hoping that we see some transition there with Dr. Wood's committee.
Now, obviously, it sounds like a lot of positive support. Was there some negative criticisms of the program as well?
No, not from people who knew what happened at Brainerd. Of course, you get people that know some of the facts, and the police reports only talked about what happened after the police got there, so it didn't mention anything about the motivation for the team, which I think may very well be legitimate. We have to research that and not turn a blind eye to it. Quite a lot happened to our players up there when they were in Brainerd, and I didn't get no negative feedback that was informed. Mostly what we had was people who talked about their longstanding commitment to Minnesota West, and teachers who were there and used to teach there, or people who had kids there or grandkids there, and people who were around when all the campuses started. I mean, that was very refreshing to me.
I'm wondering is this the first such incident that involves your football players?
No, well, it's the first one like that. Yeah, it's the 4 players who we disciplined. I had a report maybe 2 weeks before the Brainerd incident about some misconduct at a volleyball game. We investigated that and reprimanded the players. I was hoping that would be it, but it wasn't. So we investigated there was another volleyball team. It was a women's volleyball team who sent some complaints to us saying that her players had been verbally abused by some of our student athletes on the football team. So we conducted an investigation, probably was the same guys. We counseled them not to behave that way again. But I just want to say we haven't had any other incidents that were physical or anywhere racial like the Brainerd incident was. Nothing at the volleyball game or the previous incidents was anything like that. That was our first.
It also sounds like then if there was kind of a core group of people that were kind of, obviously had a past of problems or at least causing incidents, would it be, I'm sure there's people out there that might wonder if it's fair to suspend a whole football team for the actions of just a few.
Depends. I want to be cautious about what you mean by suspension. Academically, no. The disciplinary suspension we brought against the 4 players was very precise. The suspension of the football team was not because of that I asked for. It was not because of the behaviors of the 4 players. I asked for the suspension as a compromise with MCAC to keep from putting all of our athletic programs on probation. I was asking for a counter proposal where if MCAC would not put our entire athletic program on suspension, on probation, I should say that again. I really ruined it. I was asking for a counter-proposal where if MCAC would not put all of our athletic programs on probation, we would suspend our football program pending a period of review. So that's an important distinction. Thanks for asking. I didn't suspend the whole football team because of the 4 players. I suspended the football team as a compromise for the probationary period coming from MCAC.
But if the football players had been having racial slurs thrown at them and things like that, would it have been maybe a better compromise to just ask the MCAC to put the probation on the football team instead of all of the teams, instead of asking for a suspension?
I don't know if that would have been enough. Historically, that's not been what MCAC does. The probationary period was really against the college for insufficient management of the game. I think the same probation went out against the CLC team. Typically, if the MCAC review feels like the management of the program is the thing at question, they will put all of the programs on probation because the same people manage all of the programs. So the thing that you're saying now is a great counter-proposal, and maybe that's the kind of thing that'll come out of the committee that we have formed. Whatever comes out of the committee, I want it to be something that makes our athletic program better for the incident at Brainerd and really for whatever troubles our football team might have had. I'm a big believer in trying to make lemonade out of lemons, so if we can take this football season with the football team and come out better for it as a result of review and improved practices, that'll be a great thing for everybody.
One thing I kind of taking a look at the letter from sent by the Minnesota College Athletic Conference to Minnesota West, and the first one talked about having game managers on site for all games, not just home games, and that person could not be a football coach. So is this something that maybe the committee would be talking about? Because I think obviously that's definitely a wrinkle that for road games is a significant. Because there's such a long trip.
Typically, only the home team has administrators there. In a case of a probationary period, we would have administrators at every game, even at the away games. That's a consideration for the committee. Another consideration would be a percentage of local players from around Southwest Minnesota, Iowa, and South Dakota. The reason that's an issue for us to consider is that we're a community college and a state-supported community college, so we want we don't want our outreach to exceed our mission, which would be workforce development, civic pride, contributions to the communities that we serve. So something like a recommendation of a specific percentage, whatever the committee thinks is appropriate. All of our players up to that percentage would be local. We would have administrators at the game. Possible sources of funding could be added. Anything like that will be a great topic for the committee.
So what is this committee going to be working on? Is it going to be just exclusively on football, or would it be for all programs?
No. The two things I've asked the committee to talk about are football and soccer. Primarily football because, of course, that's the most urgent thing. I don't want to delay those conversations while we talk about something else. But while we're on the topic, it would just be so convenient to have that kind of expertise in the room and talk about the addition of a soccer program. I'd really like to have the committee consider the reality and the sustainability of adding a soccer program as well. So the committee would not be looking at all of our programs, only football and the possible addition of soccer.
You also mentioned that the other team was exonerated, yet they had, of course, intoxicated fans near their field. Will you ask for any kind of action to obviously, for some accountability on the other end to make sure that that doesn't happen when Minnesota West is at an away game? Because, there's only so much control you have when you go to an opposing venue.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for bringing that up. I should have mentioned it earlier that there's always a site administrator at every college event, and we're getting some reports that the site administrator who should have been observing that kind of thing was actually calling the game. So his attention was diverted into calling the football game rather than watching the people who were the unruly fans. We can always walk away from a game, so I've instructed my coaches, I've instructed all of our coaches, if ever they're at a game and any of our players get hit with a racial slur again, we're going to stop the competition and walk away from the game. If that had happened early enough in this game, I think we could have avoided the violence after the game. I'm also grateful that nothing more severe happened. Nobody had a weapon. Nobody used a weapon. But you mentioned future games, and there's only so much we can do. So you can imagine the safety factor on my mind. Part of why I wanted to suspend our football activities pending a review is for the issue of safety, because I don't want our football players to be going into an environment where they're potentially unsafe, and coaches as well. So this will give us a chance to have the committee talk about mandatory safety procedures for players while they're at away games. The committee could also talk about what's appropriate smack talk. I was young once myself about 100 years ago, so when I was young, I understand if you're in an athletic competition, you're going to be talking smack, but you just don't go that far. You don't go like it went at the Brainerd game. So the fans were out of line. I haven't received any reports that the other players were out of line. I think their smack talk was appropriate, probably on both sides. But I am concerned about safety at future games, and I am concerned about suspending our program long enough to determine that our players and our coaching staff will be safe in the future, home and away.
If the Minnesota College Athletic Conference does accept your counter proposal, the appeal, I should say, and the football program is suspended for an indeterminate amount of time, is that going to have an effect on recruiting and the future of the program?
I doubt it. Again, we're Division III, so players who play for us are going to play for the love of the game. We're not allowed to give them scholarships or housing, or there's just so much we're not allowed to give them. So ideally, if the MCAC, I have a feeling MCAC will come back with an acceptance pending the review of our revised plan. So they won't just say, sure, go ahead and he's right. I think they're going to come back and say, yeah, we'll go along with your proposal or your counter proposal, but we want to see what that plan is before we accept it. So something like that would allow MCAC to look at our plans and then hopefully not have any interruption of our program.
Now, going back to kind of the budgets and the money issue, obviously the football team brings in a lot of players, to Minnesota West as well. Is Minnesota West's football program, I've been hearing that for the most part, are they self-sufficient? I mean, how much money do they actually kind of lean on from the college?
Well, we're a nonprofit organization, so everything doesn't have to be profitable. But at the end of the day, we have to have one penny more than we spent. So the part of what I hope the committee can come up with are concrete recommendations for sustainable funding. Our primary mission is, of course, going to be workforce development and a workforce pool for employers to pick from, job training, skills for people. So pretty much, down the line from that primary responsibility is going to be the offering of a civic program like a sporting activity, football included. So we can always afford to pay our bills. I haven't looked at what would be all the ancillary profits or losses, like concession stand or people staying in hotel rooms, things like that. So everything in athletics and even academics cannot boil down to just money. There's also concerns about character development and contribution to the society for valuable training for people to grow into mature and valuable adults, and entertainment for faculty and staff and people who come to support our colleges at theater events. All of those things are really in a list of considerations. It doesn't always boil down to money, but the bigger piece of pie we give to one thing, the smaller piece of pie to another. That's an old analogy, but it's accurate. So the part of what the committee will be charged with doing is looking at not only the direct cost of providing a football program, but also the indirect costs and the indirect revenue as well. So if the college can support the community a little bit by having people eat at restaurants and stay in hotels and buy gas at the station down the street, things like that, that's very valuable to us. We want to be able to do that as well. But short of the study, I can't tell you what those numbers are.
And one of the comments that we're hearing a lot from the public is that maybe the college is looking to use this as an excuse to replace football with soccer. How would you address that directly?
No, it's not accurate. If we can have both, I'd like that. The two considerations will be independent. I'll tell you that as our culture changes and as their constituent demographics change, we need to keep looking at what we're offering, considering who lives there. So that's true for all of our academic programs. That's true for all of our athletic programs. And I would tell people we'll always review what's appropriate for the constituents we have at any given time. But no, we're not using football as a way to make room for soccer. The two considerations would really be separate.
Dr. Shrubb, going back to the committee again, you talked about obviously former President Ron Wood coming back to kind of head this committee. Has there been any, other people that have been assigned to this committee so far? How big of a committee are you looking for? Who do you have people in mind that you want to be on this committee? What are you looking for?
No, not yet. Ron and I really just communicated over the weekend, and today's Tuesday, so he had plans to travel this week, and like I mentioned, I'll be in the state capitol here in Minnesota from today, which is Tuesday through Saturday. So I just told him when we got back together, we'd talk and work out those details. Some combination of experts and fans. I'm certainly not an athletic expert, but I could probably be a nice person to have on the committee as a citizen for the area. So we haven't really talked about who all would be on it. As for size, I would say not too big, not too small. I wish I had a more specific answer for you there, but I don't want it to be so big that the thing is just lumbering. But I don't know. If I could, if you're on a rough number, I'd say like 8 or 10 or 12 people, somewhere around there I would think would be fine.
One other thing about the committee, one of the comments that I saw was kind of talking about using this committee to create a vision. What did you kind of mean? What kind of vision are you looking for the future of not just the football team, but athletics in general?
A vision that would be that would review our demographics for our constituents, not only now, but say 5 years and 10 years into the future. A vision that would treat football not only as an isolated athletic event, but also a contribution civically. A vision that would talk about the extended goals of our athletic program theory in a way that football and hopefully soccer would fit in. And a vision that would look at character development for our players and the people who come to our games. So there are residual benefits for any expenditure in an educational institution like mine. So I would want to be sure that we're creating those ancillary benefits with some purpose that will be guided by vision. The MNSCU system has documents that go into what we are trying to do as we chart the future. In fact, they're called that, Charting the Future. So we want to be sure that our local vision is a contribution to the overall state MNSCU vision, especially with something that's as public and emotional as a sporting event like football can be.
Once again, Minnesota West President Dr. Richard Shrubb joining us here on Tri-State Sports Talk. Dr. Shrubb, we really do appreciate the time today and that you have given us. We really appreciate it, and we thank you for your time today.
Excellent. It's always my pleasure. I was a reporter myself as a young man. I want you to keep my cell phone number and you call anytime because the more we can communicate two ways with our constituents on a wide geography, the better that we'll all be.
Dr. Shrubb, again, we appreciate the time. Have a great day.
Pleasure. Thanks. Bye-bye.